Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I'm Siddharth Zarabi and you're watching Easynomics. On the show today, we focus on the Bangladesh crisis, a country with which India shares a robust and dynamic trade relationship. So while there's a lot to be discussed in terms of the strategic implications, the foreign policy consequences, national security consequences, and the politics that Bangladesh is going through, on the show today we will focus on trade, which between the two nations is characterized by proximity and a lot of similarity in various trade aspects. The trade volume between India and Bangladesh has been growing steadily. In fact, that country is one of our largest trading partners in South Asia, and both countries, especially during the past 10 years of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's tenure and of the deposed Prime Minister of Bangladesh, both have grown. Exports and imports of a variety of goods, including textiles that most of us know, and pharmaceuticals, among other products. The trade is conducted through the border, a very long border. In fact, viewers, India has the longest land border, that is with Bangladesh. It's well over 4,100 kilometers plus, and that has led to a lot of land ports. We are members, both India and Bangladesh, of many regional trade agreements, including SAFTA and also the Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation, that's called BIMSTEC. And there's also been an effort for a one-on-one bilateral pact, and connectivity, improving infrastructure, having good roads, all of that very, very significant. And if you look at India's troubled neighborhood, one can safely say that India and Bangladesh, as far as trade is concerned, had the best deal going so far, and energy cooperation has also increased in the recent past, with India supplying electricity to Bangladesh. There are joint ventures in power generation, and Indian companies have also made substantial investments in that country. So what is at stake as far as the broader economic relationship is concerned? How will a new government, whatever shape that takes in Bangladesh, we are still not clear who it will be. Of course, there are names like Mr. Muhammad Yunus as a sort of interim caretaker prime minister, but the new Bangladesh government and its trade policies, its politics, and its overall approach towards India will be very, very significant to determine the course and the nature of our relationship. And I have very senior experts on this subject with me today here on Business Today Television. Prasenjit Bose, economist, he understands the trade between the two countries. We are also joined by Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, and we'll also get other voices on with us during the show. But before I go to anyone else, I want to go to Prasenjit here. Prasenjit, put in context the importance of the trade between India and Bangladesh, and also let me introduce one more guest, Suman Chowdhury, the Chief Economist and Head of Research at Acuite Ratings and Research. But to you first, Prasenjit, what's at stake here in terms of the business and economic relationship with Bangladesh?
Well, much is at stake, and as you mentioned in your introductory comments, that in the context of South Asia, the India-Bangladesh trade relationship is vital. And actually it is, if you look at the numbers, India exports far more to Bangladesh than it imports. So it's very important from the India's point of view, and over the past, I would say, almost 2 decades now, the economic interdependence has gone beyond trade, which is very natural because, as you mentioned, that we share a very lengthy border, and it's natural if you look at other parts of the world where regional integration has been happening all over the world, be it in Southeast Asia or in Europe. In that context, of course, because of geopolitical reasons, regional integration in South Asia has been a problem. But the Indo-Bangladesh trade has been an exception, and I think that that is because of the durable, the durable political relationship that India has shared with Bangladesh, and the interdependence in economic terms has gone beyond trade to significant investments that have cross-border investments, especially Indian investments in Bangladesh that has grown in the recent period.
Absolutely.
Now, what has happened in Bangladesh has an India dimension. So,
Absolutely. Prasenjit, we'll come to that because I want opening comments from the other two panelists as well. Suman, I want you to expand on that further. What are the biggest business and investment deals, projects and relationships that might come under pressure if we have a continuing adverse situation and attitude towards India in Bangladesh?
Right. So, Siddharth, thanks for inviting me. Clearly, we, as Prasenjit mentioned, we have a healthy trade surplus with Bangladesh. Of course, the total, exports is only 2.5% to Bangladesh for total merchandise exports, the total exports to Bangladesh at 11.1 billion. But it has been kind of very steady. More importantly, there are certain strategic sectors like textiles, for example, where there is a strong supply chain linkage, where there are Indian manufacturers who have garment units there, and we supply yarns or fabrics to them for garment manufacture. So clearly, that kind of supply chain can see a risk, although it can be also a little bit of an advantage if it continues in the long term for some garment manufacturers based out of India. The trade, the important part here is that we had a supportive government in Bangladesh so far. And there were, as you are aware, that there were fresh investments that the whole Indian corporate sector have made, not just in the textile sector, but in infrastructure. There are a lot of PSUs who have been setting up power plants. We have been supplying power. There are automobile units, assembly units, which have been set up. There is the FMCG companies who have been operating quite extensively in Bangladesh. So clearly, Indian businesses are very much present in the whole Bangladesh ecosystem. So that's where we can see some clear impact if this problem persists for a longer time. The other part is the trade part, which was, expected that the trade volumes will continuously increase with Bangladesh. Right. In fact, there was an FTA, free trade agreement, as you would be aware, that was being discussed. Now, all those will hit the back burner right now. So there is clear.
So hold your thought there, Suman, because I'm now going to an actual practitioner who has helped steer and develop the course of India and Bangladesh relations. Madam Sikri, I come to you because we want to focus on the economic impact of the crisis in Bangladesh. Do you think that an adverse set of events is now likely to take place as far as the growth of the relationship is concerned? Are existing investors in Bangladesh from India, all companies, including public and private sector companies, likely to face a tough time? Do you see reversals happening in the broader direction of our trade relationship?
Well, first of all, as is very clear, supply chains are the first to be impacted whenever there's any civil unrest. So one can expect a complete disruption of supply chains for the moment, because we understand that at the border between India and Bangladesh, there are no guards right now from the Bangladesh side. So there's no policemen, there's no guards, there's complete anarchy in Bangladesh. We have to recognize that. And so the Benapole-Petropole border, which is one of the major points of trade between Bangladesh and India, I can imagine that everything there is at a total standstill. I think we must also remember that the impact on Bangladesh also will be very severe, because while India has a very large number, does have a surplus balance of trade and excess exports of about $9 billion to Bangladesh, but many of these export items are inputs into Bangladesh's own export sector, like ready-made garments, textile yarn, textile machinery, and even some for the pharmaceutical sectors. So if there is any stoppage in the Bangladesh factories, and many of them have been shut down now for quite a long time, then everything will back up, and there will be, of course, as you're noticing, perishable goods also stuck at the border. There will be the fish coming from the Bangladesh side. There'll be other items going from the Indian side, agricultural products, even onions and so on, that go from the Indian side. So definitely there will be an impact on trade. And we have to note that despite the fact that Bangladesh is, of course, a very strong trading partner for India, two impacts. One is, will it continue to be so if the anarchy prevails for any more time? And even if the anarchy stops, even if with Professor Mohammad Yunus reaching Bangladesh only tomorrow evening and then trying his best to get things under control, how long will it take for things to resume? And what is the condition today of Indian investment enterprises in Bangladesh? We have a very significant list of Indian investors in Bangladesh, which includes Tata Motors, which includes Hero Motor Corporation, which includes Adani Power, which includes VIP, Pidilite, Marico, Dabur, Asian Paints. The list is quite long. Now, we have already heard from Bangladesh that the Indian Cultural Center in Dhaka has been completely vandalized. I mean, I think you were showing visuals of that. I don't know whether you noted that it was the Indian Cultural Center, but it has been completely vandalized. So I think this attack on Indian investments and Indian interests, there is no news yet about the impact on Indian investment offices, company offices in Bangladesh. Many of them have local partners. Whether those have been impacted or not, we do not know. But certainly, I do expect that many of the Indian personnel posted there, Indian business representatives, they would be coming back to India. We do know, as of this morning, that the Indian High Commission has had its first round of evacuation, and non-essential staff has been evacuated to India. So if the business community is going to follow suit, the investors and the other, our External Affairs Minister had stated in Parliament, there are about 19,000 people of Indian origin in Bangladesh, and about 8,000 of them are students. Most of them have returned already. Now it's the next round, which maybe the business representatives would also be looking at it. So the picture is not very bright at the moment. I think we have to take an assessment on why did this anarchy come about. It's very easy to talk about student reform and student protest, but it is what is the reason for the regime change? Who is behind it?
Allow me to ask you a follow-up on that, because before I go to the economists on the panel, ma'am, what shape of government is likely to come into place in Bangladesh? I ask you to go into your experience and your gut feel. What is the new Bangladesh government likely to look like and comprise of?
Well, in my view, the students' reform movement, the quota reform movement that was there, is just the pretext. I don't think that in any formation of the future government, this impact of student reform is going to have any role, because actually Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the students were always on the same page. So if you talk about the students demanding quota reform, Sheikh Hasina gave them that reform way back in 2018. She abolished all quotas for children of freedom fighters way back in 2018. There was a student protest at that time, and she abolished it. This year, in June, in response to an appeal in the High Court overturned that and restored the quota. Then she went to the Supreme Court. And when she went to the Supreme Court, some students groups were with her in that application to the Supreme Court. They had their own lawyer and they were on that. And that decision of the Supreme Court came on 21st July. So you would say that the quota reform movement would have met its full requirement by that time. But in the meanwhile, because there had been some violence between the Chhatra League and the students, the other political parties, the Jamaat-e-Islami, their student wing, Islami Chhatra Shibir came in, the BNP students wing came in and took over the agitation. So actually, for the longest of time,
Right.
this has the last 1 week particularly been controlled by the Jamaat-e-Islami. And when the chief of army staff announced on Monday that Sheikh Hasina had left the country and resigned, he did not announce a government in its place. He said, "Yes, I'm looking for an interim government." There is no government in Bangladesh at this moment. There is no
Okay.
government.
So,
And now the point is we are seeing, there's a new chief of the Dhaka Metropolitan Police. There's a new head of the Rapid Action Battalion. But who are these? Who has appointed them? There are new police people being appointed. Police stations are completely burned down. There is not a single police station in Dhaka which is standing, and police officers have left their position completely.
fair point, ma'am, and I think you sketched the scenario very, very well, because the kind of breakdown in this of the state in that country is very clear. I want to come to you, Prasenjit, for a moment. What does this mean for India's neighborhood first policy in terms of trade? And I also want to tell our viewers about the fact that this was the only border where, while there might have been infiltration, but this was amongst the more settled borders from a trade point of view. Look at our situation. We have a line of control and a line of actual control, no trade happening there. The IB, the international border with Pakistan, we know the situation there. We know what's happening in Sri Lanka and the Chinese ingress. We know about Bhutan, we know about Myanmar. So Bangladesh was in some ways also our connect and an alternative route to the northeast. Prasenjit, do you think this is going to now require a major rethink as far as our trade and diplomacy is concerned?
Well, I am not an expert on strategic affairs and foreign policy, but I can tell you 2-3 quick points. First, I think that if it is the case that our see, Pakistan is a different thing, because I think the political issues vis-a-vis Pakistan have a very complex historical background. But if it is the case that India's trade with all other South Asian nations have not really taken off, we have liberalized our trade regime for more than 3 decades now, and we are actually, our export GDP, import GDP ratios have, kind of increased very significantly over time, over the past 3 decades. But the trade with our immediate neighbors have not really taken off. Even if you consider Bangladesh, which is the largest trading partner in South Asia, if you, as a proportion of total trade both to India and Bangladesh's total trade, it is actually a very minuscule number. So we really need to think, that whether the kind of strategic policies we are pursuing vis-a-vis our neighbors, whether it is serving our economic interests or not. And I don't see that self-reflection in what Ambassador Sikri was mentioning, that if this situation has happened in Bangladesh, I'm sure that there are a lot of forces in Bangladesh who are not particularly, they're inimical to India's interest, and that is also...
In fact, Prasenjit, not only inimical, but I don't know how many of our viewers note that a self-styled radical YouTuber of Bangladeshi origin has been the one who is behind the India Out campaign. And when that started, perhaps none of us had an inkling of how the situation would lead to a complete collapse in the country. But Suman, I want to come to you. Take this beyond the immediate consequences as far as trade is concerned, but is our neighborhood first trade policy, which actually just meant Bangladesh, frankly, is that now shot to pieces, and is there the requirement of a new deal from the Indian side?
Yeah, I think very clearly there is uncertainty on the any fresh trade arrangements with Bangladesh. I think India will wait for a stable government, for a stable regime there. And of course, it may take some time. We have just heard that it's going to be an interim government. So we don't know how things will pan out in the future in terms of more stable government. So pending that, the impact, I think, is that fresh investments, which, as you know, between the two governments, there were several projects, infrastructure projects that were being discussed, which would improve, also was strategic for India because it would improve the connectivity with Northeast. Some of these projects may get impacted. We might therefore see the deferral of some of these projects that had been planned till we see the return of a stable government. I think, therefore, our view is that there is going to be a short-term impact for sure in terms of supply chain disruptions, trade disruptions, and there will be a longer-term investment kind of impact if we don't see a stable government in Bangladesh.
Madam Sikri, I am coming to you, and please take this point forward. What does this mean for the Indian response in the days and months ahead?
As far as India's neighborhood first foreign policy is concerned, I would like to say that from our side, it is fully in place. And we are prepared to have good relations with Bangladesh. We're prepared to take on board, okay, changes of government happen. We know that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is in India. She's an old, long-term friend of India's, but there has been a regime change and now we will deal with a new regime. That's fine. But I'm talking about the physical conditions on the ground. We will try to implement our neighborhood first foreign policy very seriously, but my doubts arise from the physical situation on the ground where there is complete anarchy in the rural areas. Hindus are being killed and lynched and hung upside down, and Awami League people are being killed, and with the police station being burnt, all the records of any miscreants have been totally destroyed. So now the attempt is to put a completely new regime. The statues of Sheikh Mujib, the father of the nation, as important to them as Mahatma Gandhi ji is to us, they've been brought down and destroyed. His home, the place where he lived and where he was assassinated, that's been destroyed. So it's the attempt to bring in a completely new regime. Whether Professor Dr. Mohammed Yunus arriving tomorrow evening will bring a change in this towards normalcy, that is to be seen. But in the meanwhile, what it seems to me that even before he arrives, many changes are being put in place that are going to cause some difficulties, because even the army, senior officers in the army, the number 2, 3 and 4 have been asked to leave their duties. And where are they gone? We don't know. Who's going to come in place? We don't know. So who is doing these appointments? We don't know, because these are happening in the absence of a government. So this worry is there. We have to recognize the situation within Bangladesh.
Sikri, we have funded a lot of infrastructure development in Bangladesh, very significant numbers, and one of the subtext behind that was the access to the northeast, our own northeast. Do you think now that will become our greatest pressure point?
I think that, yes, the connectivity program between India and Bangladesh was very good. And we had a lot of good programs in addition to all the trade that I mentioned, like the friendship pipeline. Petroleum products coming to Bangladesh from the Maligarh refinery in Assam and coming to north of Bangladesh at very reasonable cost, rather than the same products coming from Chittagong all the way north, Then the Akhaura-Agartala trade, all the trade with northeast through Bangladesh was actually managed in many ways by Bangladesh individual companies. All the logistics movements say that you have access to Mongla Port, then you get onto a barge or a vessel going all the way to Zakiganj on the India-Assam border. All this has been done by Bangladesh companies. So it was a great mutual benefit that had built up in the trade and economic relationship between Bangladesh and India. Now, I very much hope that this trade and this mutual benefit and the trade and investments built on mutual benefit will continue, because the business community will always want. The business community in Bangladesh is very smart, they're very entrepreneurial, they've been doing very well, and they've carried the country upwards in terms of economic development. They're no longer a least developed country. So one hopes that the pragmatism of the business community will prevail, and whoever comes, will be able to stop the anarchy. But even the business community, when they know that there's complete anarchy on the roads, they won't move.
Absolutely. What can they do? What can they do? And viewers, the broader concern for India remains that we've been forever in a very unstable neighborhood. Pakistan and now Bangladesh, and look at the consequences that could come about if Bangladesh fails to achieve stability. One final round of questions, and I come to you, Prasenjit. One of the things about the Bangladesh economic performance over the past decade or so has been the great improvement in GDP and per capita income. And many people wonder that a country that was doing so well economically, and while there may be job pressures, has imploded because of politics and other reasons. And take a look at that, viewers. Bangladesh per capita income, you could roughly say that these are the Sheikh Hasina years there. The chart can go back even longer. Remember, she had been sworn in for a fourth time. Prasenjit, is the Bangladesh economic miracle that we have seen now under threat in your assessment?
Actually, your audio there's a problem. I'm not being able to hear you properly, but from what I've been able to understand is you are referring to the economic performance under the Hasina regime, and basically asking this question that, why, despite that, why this situation has emerged. I think there are two reasons for that. First of all, post-COVID, the main drivers of economic growth in Bangladesh, they have suffered. And if you look at textile exports, if you look at other, other manufacturing export in general, their dependence on remittances have grown, and they also had to approach the IMF for a loan. So in the recent past, the economic situation, especially they have not been able to recover economically from the COVID shock in a way that many other economies have. So that provides, and therefore that has had impact in terms of rising unemployment and so on. But I want to make a general point that you see, the economic performance, ultimately you have to look at economic performance in relative terms. It just can't, Bangladesh continues to be a very poor country. I think that even India, despite its huge GDP and so on, in per capita terms, we are also a very poor country.
Absolutely.
So let us not kind of exaggerate the economic achievements. And a country, is not only assessed by its people, their living conditions, in terms of, the GDP numbers. Political, how the GDP numbers are translating into living conditions matter, and other aspects matter in terms of political freedom, in terms of education policy, in terms of health indicators and so on. So I think that the problem in Bangladesh is essentially political, and there has been a democracy deficit. There is no doubt about it. I think that there are people who are trying to destabilize the country and trying to take advantage of the situation and do damage.
Well, it's without doubt, Prasenjit, without doubt, Indians would want, all of India would want a stable Bangladesh, and a Bangladesh that treats its minority, its Hindu minority well. That has not happened, and that is extremely unfortunate and deserves the highest condemnation. But one final question, Suman, and this is to you. Do you think a shift of some manufacturing activity, particularly in the textiles sector, is possible away from Bangladesh into India, because a lot of the export-oriented industries from Bangladesh, who may find it difficult to sustain, could utilize equally low labor cost and raw materials from India. Is that at all possible according to you, Suman Chowdhury?
Yeah, Siddharth. So what we have also mentioned in our report, which we published yesterday, that yes, if the the current political crisis is protracted, it continues for a longer time, and we have a very volatile kind of a political regime, then what happens is typically, Bangladesh is one of the largest, garment exporters, and they have significant exports to US and Europe. And we should remember that a part of this was the market share which was taken away from India. Some of this were the loss to Indian garment exporters, and Bangladesh was, cost competitive. And I think that may, if the political issues remain and there is disruption expected by the importing countries, then possibly you can see some shift back, some of that business coming back to Indian garment exporters. Yes, it's not going to happen immediately, but if you continuously see, as in, let's say in some other neighboring countries, if we see a very volatile political regime, that scenario is possible, and garment manufacturers will definitely have an advantage if that happens.
Absolutely. Viewers, there you have it from experts in the field of what will be the medium term and long term impact of the Bangladesh crisis. And just to end and summarize the argument, it's very clear that post COVID, the world trade order has been changing, and with Bangladesh, there is some more change that is afoot. Of course, it's in our immediate neighborhood, and therefore the consequences are going to be significant and are very, very different. Madam Sikri, Suman and Prasenjit, thank you very much for your time with us today. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of Easynomics. We'll continue to track all matters related to this crisis, and I'll see you again. Until then, goodbye.
I want to understand from you, is it good news? And of course, seems like the real estate sector has been pushing back the government on the indexation news the moment it had come back, the moment it was announced in the budget. And do you see this as a full rollback, or is it just a partial rollback? Because I guess the prospective tax will still remain, right?
Shakshi, this is very good news. Good morning, and it's a good news, and which has come late evening yesterday. I believe all middle class peoples, particularly